Um, Welcome everyone to tonight's special council meeting. My name is Councillor Cynthia Watson and I'm the Mayor of Boroondara. I'll now call upon Councillor Sinfield to read the council prayer.
My apologies, Mayor. I don't seem to have a copy of it with me.
Well, we will wait just one moment and that will be provided to you. Thank you, Councillor Sinfield, and apologies that that was not made available to you to read in a timely manner. I believe it's just arriving.
And thank you, it has. My apologies. Almighty God, we humbly seek your blessings upon this council. Direct and prosper its deliberations to the advancement of your and to the true welfare of the people of the city of Boroondara. Amen.
Amen. The City of Boroondara acknowledges the traditional custodians of this land and respects their customs and traditions. The health and safety and well-being of the community has and will always be the paramount consideration of the Council. Council continues to be guided by the government directives and wants to be able to do the right thing for the health of our community during the COVID-19 pandemic. The COVID-19 Omnibus Emergency Services Act 2020, passed by the Victorian Parliament on the 23rd of April 2020, included changes to the Local Government Act 2020, which affected the conduct of council meetings. The changes became effective from the 1st of May 2020. Council is now able to hold virtual meetings and councillors can participate in meetings remotely by electronic means of communication. The special council meeting is being live streamed on the council website, so you'll be able to view the proceedings of the meeting, councillor deliberations and voting. The meeting is also being recorded and will be made available on the council website as soon as practicable after the meeting. Should technical problems be encountered by the council, and everyone please touch wood, then the meeting will be adjourned until resolution or postponed. I'll start by introducing my fellow councillors and officers who are present for this meeting. Councillor Jane Addis, Councillor Philip Healy, Councillor Steve Hurd, Councillor Lisa Hollingsworth, Councillor Jim Park, Councillor Coral Ross, Councillor Felicity Sinfield, Councillor Gary Thompson and Councillor Jack Whitman. I'll now ask the councillors to please indicate that they are present for the meeting. And my apologies, I should have done this when I just introduced you. So I will begin with Councillor Jane Addis.
I'm present, thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Phil Healy.
Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Steve Hurd.
Present, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Lisa Hollingsworth.
Present, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Jim Park.
Good evening, Mayor.
Yeah. Councillor Cora Ross.
Present, Madam Chair.
Councillor Felicity Sinfield.
Present.
Councillor Gary Thompson.
Present, thank you.
And Councillor Jack Wegman.
Present, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. We have a number of officers who I will also introduce into this meeting. Our Chief Executive, Mr. Philip Storer, is here with us this evening. The Director of City Planning, Shiran Wickramasinghe. The Director of Community Development, Karen McLean. Director of Environment and Infrastructure, Mr. Daniel Freer. Director Customer Service and Business Transformation, Mr. Bruce Dobson. The Manager of Governance, Mr. David Thompson. And Governance Projects Officer, Ms. Elizabeth Manu. There are also a number of officers in attendance tonight and they will be introduced as they present their reports. I will now move on to the order of businesses listed on our business papers. Commencing with apologies, Mr. Thompson, are there any?
Through you, Madam Mayor, there are no apologies for this evening.
To a business is the declaration of conflict of interest of any councillor or council officer. Are there any conflicts of interest that need to be declared this evening? There being none, we will now proceed to the presentation of officers' reports, and the first item this evening is the proposed budget for 2020-21, and that will be presented this evening with an introduction, after an introduction by Mr. Greg Hall. So it's my pleasure to make the introduction for tonight's budget, and that is what I will proceed to do now. Tonight, I present to you this proposed budget for the 2020-21 financial year. This year, we as a community have been presented with unique challenges as a result of the coronavirus pandemic that has swept the world. We have been supporting our community in a declared state of emergency in Victoria and a health crisis not seen for many generations. The impact of the systemic and incidental challenges which have arisen have been far-reaching and touched all Boroondara residents, businesses, community groups, and the wider community in one way or another. I want to take this opportunity to thank our CEO, Mr. Philip Storer, for his exceptional leadership and the staff for the outstanding job they have done and continue to do. They have been creative and innovative in finding solutions to pivot the organisation's delivery capabilities and ensure that Council has continued to meet the needs of our community throughout this pandemic. On behalf of Boroondara Council and the Boroondara community, it is my privilege as Mayor to extend to every member of staff a heartfelt thank you. I would also like to acknowledge and thank the many thousands of volunteers who have and continue to serve our community, providing much needed care and compassion to those in need. We are blessed and strengthened as a community by the selfless service they give. The ongoing challenges we have as a council continue to meet have been the source of much intellectual rigour and forthright debate as we have considered and drafted this year's budget. While as councillors we can disagree on many things, one principle which unites us all is that we have a responsibility to our residents and will deliver on the promises we've made to our community even during uncertain times. We work hard to balance the needs of our diverse and growing community when developing Council's budget each year to deliver services and infrastructure for Boroondara. Under these unique and challenging circumstances, we are committed to balancing the needs of our community based on sound principles as outlined in the Boroondara Community Plan, while providing support and relief to those who need it most. This proposed budget has been prepared in line with Council's commitment to sustainable budgeting, responsible financial management, and under the Victorian Government's rate cap for 2020-21. Our COVID response is not a single line item in the budget. Rather, it is the focus of every line item in the budget. Meeting the needs of our community requires a whole of organisation response. These impacts have been spread right across Council's budget, from fee waivers for food health registrations to lower green fees at the Freeway Golf Course and everything in between. We have been able to tackle these challenges head on while still delivering a sustainable forward budget position. Included in this proposed budget is funding towards our $4.5 million COVID-19 support and relief package, which commenced in April, comprising multiple initiatives to ease financial burden on Boroondara residents, businesses and community groups who have experienced hardship as a result of the pandemic. Council has been able to pivot to respond to the impacts of COVID-19 which in financial terms total over $16 million across both this and the next financial year. Council remains committed to responding to the community's needs and aspirations reflected in the Boroondara Community Plan and continuing to invest in programs, services and infrastructure that create jobs. It is indeed more important than ever now to invest in our infrastructure and community assets. As our city begins to recover from the impacts of COVID-19 and restrictions are eased to allow our community to come together and reconnect once more, we will deliver $81.4 million in renewed and new community assets over the coming financial year. We will continue to progress construction on a number of shovel-ready significant major projects like the Kew Recreation Centre redevelopment, the development of the new community precinct in Canterbury, and completion of a brand new Camberwell Community Centre, which will boost employment during construction phase and create employment opportunities once completed. We have allocated funding for community facilities and services like our libraries, health, families, recreation and more, so that we can continue to support and strengthen our community with these important services. We will continue to invest in care for Boroondara's many beautiful and much loved parks and gardens, along with other council assets like roads and footpaths. You will find many other initiatives within the proposed budget, including an investment of $4.04 million on a range of initiatives to minimise our environmental footprint. As part of this investment, Council will purchase 100% green renewable electricity for our buildings and street lighting, plant new trees across the city, deliver education programs to the community, engage with our community to develop a 10-year climate action plan, and upgrade infrastructure to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. We'll spend $1.5 million for shopping centre and streetscape improvements at Coffin Village and Highfield Road. $1.71 million for the continued delivery of Council's very first placemaking projects to revitalise Mailing Road in Canterbury and Glenferrie Road in Hawthorne. And $2.6 million for a new regional playground and skate park at Victoria Park in Kew, just to name a few. It is important to us that our community has the opportunity to provide their input on this proposed budget. Following tonight's meeting, the proposed budget document will be available for public inspection and comment from Wednesday 3rd of June to Wednesday 1st of July. Copies will be available on our website and at our libraries for those who require a hard copy. Written submissions will be presented and considered by Council at a special Council meeting held online and streamed live through Council's website on Monday, 13th of July, prior to the official adoption of the budget. This proposed budget addresses the clear and present needs of our community during a time of crisis and also plans for a better future. It will ensure that Boroondara remains a beautiful, vibrant and inclusive city despite the challenges we are currently facing. Only those who never step, never stumble. Let us step forward together as a community and build a better Boroondara. Thank you. I will now pass the time over to Mr. Hall. Councillor Healy.
Sorry, I thought we were getting ready to move the motion for the budget, but I'm ready when you are seeking such a motion, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Healy. And at the appropriate time, I'll return to you to move the motion. And I'll now turn the time over to Mr. Hall for his presentation of the budget.
Through you, Madam Mayor. This report presents the proposed budget 2021 for public notice. The proposed budget has been prepared in line with Council's commitment to sustainable budgeting, responsible financial management, the Victorian Government's rate cap for 2021 and Australian accounting standards. Also presented for adoption tonight, but not for public notice, is the Council Plan 2017 to 21, as is required annually by the Local Government Act. I will be brief. The officer's recommendation is on screen. Through you, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Councillors, are there any questions for Mr. Hall this evening before I return to Councillor Healy? There being no questions for you, Mr. Hall, thank you very much for your report. And Councillor Healy, you foreshadowed a motion this evening.
The motion is printed, Madam Mayor.
Well, thank you very much, Councillor Healy. Councillor Hurd.
Happy to second, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hurd. Councillor Healy, would you like to speak to the motion this evening?
Madam Mayor, I am happy to speak to it, but I think it's been eloquently preambled by yourself and also Mr. Hall, so I might wait for my right of reply later.
Thank you. Is there any opposition to tonight's budget? Thank you, Councillor Addis. Councillor Ross has noted. So Councillor Healy, you have indicated that you would like to speak later. So I will ask Councillor Addis, would you like to speak now?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, I think I do need to speak and say why I'm taking such an unusual step of not supporting all that we see in this motion. I think there's much to commend in this budget, but I do have some issues with it. I think that it doesn't respond adequately to the difficulties that many in our community are facing. We all know that our local businesses are struggling, and I think we've all heard from our local shopping centres how much they're finding it a problem to open up their businesses and get back to work. And what I'm seeing in this budget is many things that are of great benefit to our community, but for me it's skewed. It's not keeping money aside to respond to what we yet don't know our community will need. So there are a couple of things that I particularly wanted to highlight. I'm really struggling with a rate rise when in many ways this budget feels like it's sort of business as usual, and this isn't a usual time. I'd be comfortable with a rate rise if I could see this money more clearly going to support the people who are struggling. One of the other things I'm finding it hard to support is the allocation of so much money to infrastructure, when it seems to me it would be best to delay some of these projects until we do better assess our community's needs. It's really too early in the pandemic to fully appreciate what people will need. And we are allocating a huge amount of money to, well, one in particular, but some other very big projects. And I can't really see why these can't be delayed. And related to this, and I think I've sort of said this, is yes, we have allocated money to the COVID package, but we actually haven't, when I read this, got any funds that are just sitting available to pay for what we don't know. And it's what we don't know that worries me. I could I think I probably could support this budget in normal times, but we're really in incredibly unusual times and we just don't know what our community is going to be facing in the next few months. And I'd like us to have the capacity to respond to our community's needs at a local government level. Sure, state and federal will have rescue packages, but so too does local government. We are close to our community and I'd like us to be able to respond to them. So, as I said, there's much to support here, but I can't support it in its current form. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Addis. Councillor Hurd is the seconder. Would you like to speak now, or
Yes, I would. I mean, I think we sort of changed it where the seconder was supposed to speak after the motion was moved, and I thank Councillor Addis for her comments. I'm a little bit flabbergasted, to be honest, because last week Councillor Addis and Councillor Ross and Councillor Hollingsworth were arguing that we should pretty much drop everything and respond to a climate emergency. I certainly agree that there's a climate emergency, but the motion that was moved then was very unspecific and talked about directing officers, and yet to deal with climate change. And I totally accept that we need to deal with the climate emergency, and we have got provisions in place to do that. And as you mentioned yourself, Mayor, renewable energy, the FOGO program, and a major community consultation on climate action, which will be coming up as soon as we can get over from the pandemic. I agree that they're not normal times, but Council has responded, I would say, in a very agile way, and I'd like to convey my personal thanks to the CEO and staff for the fabulous efforts they did. The times I rang on behalf of people in my ward who needed something done quickly, and it was done quickly. And these are really urgent things. These are things such as more car parks around medical services so that doctors could social distance when they were dealing with patients and testing for COVID-19. Bins, collections, all sorts of things, shops that needed things done quickly within the rubric of our legislative power, we did them quickly. And that is a great credit to officers. And the FOGO release was very difficult, and Mr McKinnon led that with Mr Freer, and that was a fabulous effort too. Again, the times that people were ringing up or writing to me with consternation about their bins and the worry that the bins hadn't been collected and all sorts of things. Within a morning, it was done during one of the most difficult times. And that costs money. It costs workers, it costs time, it costs money. And I think we've spent about 3 or 4 million extra than we needed to anyway in this budget. So we've already spent quite a bit of money in relation to the pandemic. So, you know, I think there are things in the budget that I'd like to see. You know, it'd be great for my ward if Q Rec Centre didn't happen and we could do the tuck stand now. Fabulous. But we went through a 3-month process as councillors where we looked at those things. And I'd never put the tuck stand thing forward at this stage because I know that we wouldn't have got support at this stage to do it. And the Q Rec Centre is actually about to fall apart. So literally. So it'll actually be dangerous to keep it running for too much longer. So I just don't see that we can do that now. There are other adjustments we can make, but decisions were made. It's now up to the community to give us their view, and that's who we need to hear from. When councillors go through this sort of process, we go through over a number of months, and we have a number of meetings, and we make these calls, and we sometimes vote on them, sometimes it's by consensus. And so what the community is seeing now is the result of a lot of work from Mr Hall and his team, as well as a lot of meetings from us. But it's up to you now, members of the community. It's your call now, and we're happy to listen to you. The last thing I'd like to say, and it's about to come out soon, is a vision for the Glenferrie placemaking project, which is absolutely fabulous. It's an intergenerational project which will really liven up the Glenferrie Road precinct and surrounds. And I think there's a lot of people who've spoken to me about a lot of issues are going to be really interested to read that vision when it comes out very soon. So, and that's Glenferrie placemaking is in this budget. So I think the people of Glenferrie will be really happy with what we have to offer. So, Madam Mayor, thank you for the opportunity to speak. I absolutely commend this budget. It's the best we can do in one of the most difficult times, and I congratulate Mr Storer, Mr Hall, all the staff on the great work they've done. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hurd. Is there other councillors wishing to speak this evening? Councillor Hollingsworth.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, I concur with the sentiment of Councillor Hurd's comments, and I also acknowledge Councillor Atlas's comments as well. With the budget that's before us tonight, it's not just based on a foreseeable 12-month future. This is based on 3.5 years of planning for this council term that was elected in 2016. And it's a holistic, well-considered approach that has been discussed not just in recent months, but over a period of years to realise what's before us here in this budget that we're presenting this evening. So I concur with your comments, Madam Mayor, when you talked about the extensive rigour and debate that we have gone through over the period of time. The budget before us is representative of all wards in Boroondara. It's a balanced budget. It puts together infrastructure renewal that's crucial for the City of Boroondara to be sustainable, viable and provide services to our community. As an ageing community, with the QREC in particular, it will be a state-of-the-art facility. It's the only facility that offers an all-inclusive, all-ability sports recreational facility with various options for swimming, for highball courts, for activities. It caters for the Q support group. It offers so much that the various tenants' occupancy provisions for growth, underground car parking, the design elements in it that, as I said, offer for all ability, for people that are visually impaired, for people that have hearing impairments or tactile sensory issues. It's something that has just been so well considered, as has the Camberwell Community Hub, which provides an urgent need for 3-year-old kinder, services for our younger communities, but also for the Canterbury Neighbourhood House. And in conjunction, it improves what will be very close proximity to the United Historical Societies that will be able to operate out of a building that's been created specifically for their purpose. It's about growth, it's about supporting the community, it's about recognising that how we work through issues that are present but are also issues that have been over periods of time and issues that will face us in the future. We need to act now. As Councillor Hurd said, the Q Rec Centre is at the stage where it would be not practical to invest more money into it. It is basically at the stage where it is ready for demolition, and we do need to build a new facility fairly quickly. I would encourage my councillor colleagues to support this recommendation, and I know that due diligence has gone into it where, yes, COVID has created an impact. COVID is a big concern, but this budget projects a lot of money into the various activity centres through placemaking activities to help develop, enhance and grow our retail sector, our activity centres, and placemaking in one area will benefit all of Boroondara with the learnings that we achieve. So I thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hollingsworth. Is any other councillors wishing to speak to the budget? Councillor Cynthia.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Budget time is never easy. It's exciting in many ways, but it's about balance. And, you know, we all represent different cohorts within the community, both geographically and based on our areas of interest and our own life history. So it's a tricky one. We don't always get everything that we want personally for our community in our neck of the woods. But it is about balance, and I thank Councillor Hollingsworth for her comments in relation to the Q Rec Centre, which is just nestled in Studley Ward, just over my boundary. But it's a project that Councillor Healy, Councillor Park and I have worked on very hard in recent years, and I'm very excited to see it go out to the community in its final design form. The other project I'm particularly excited about, which goes out, the design goes out to the community next week, is the new regional playground at Victoria Park, which is very exciting. And I welcome the community feedback, not just on the regional playground and various other aspects of the budget, but also on rates. That's something that I'm very willing to listen to and not something that I've got a fixed view on at this point because it is a very difficult time in our community. So all of these different components of the budget are out for community feedback, and we invite the community, as you said earlier, to give us their thoughts before we reach a final position on that. It is a challenging time. Council does have very good financial management and does have funds set aside unallocated for the, as Councillor Rada said, the what we don't know yet fund. And I'm cautious about that because this pandemic will go on for the next couple of years, likely, perhaps not in the current format that it is, but until such time as not only a vaccine is found, but a vaccine is distributed through our community, it will be a risk to all of us. So I certainly stand ready with the council officers and my colleagues and you know, in an agile way to make those decisions when we need to. But right now, it is somewhat business as usual in this budget. I commend and it should go out to the public for their feedback. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sinfield. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to the budget this evening? Councillor Ross.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've never voted against the budget before, so it's with a very heavy heart that I cannot support this budget. A few months ago, this might have been the appropriate budget, but not now. Not following the COVID-19 pandemic. I can't support this budget because it doesn't have a package to support our community and our businesses, especially after September when JobKeeper is having difficulty hearing me. Is it difficulty in hearing me?
That's better, Coral. You were fading in and out.
I can't support this this package, especially after September when JobKeeper and JobSeeker would run out. Yes, we were very responsive and agile in April and approved a $4.5 million package. But that is a package, and that's the package which is referred to in our papers. And yes, some of the measures do continue into the next financial year, but we can't re-announce something that we've already announced. Numerous councils announced immediate packages, as we did, and they are now announcing additional packages in their draft budgets. So to give you a quantum, around $150 million was announced by Victorian councils immediately after the pandemic when we did. And so far, about $200 million are in Victorians' draft budgets of now. And they're different packages. What many councils are doing is putting all of their rate increase into a COVID-19 response, plus more. So for us, that would be $3.1 million. To give an example, Corangamite, a very small municipality of some 16,140 residents, and we're about 12 times the size. They've got, and in their budget, a $2.5 million package in 2021. Money, that's in money, and in kind it's worth about 4.8 million. It includes in it grants to local charities who are responding to community need in response to COVID-19. And that's a common theme of what a lot of councils are doing. And is there a need in Boroondara? Well, food relief before COVID-19, amongst 3 of our charities, that they were giving out 148 meals per week and no food parcels. Now they're giving out 736 meals per week and 144 food parcels. That's just 3 of our local organisations. And that's while JobKeeper and JobSeeker are in place. We have reported, and I'll quote, community organisations, sporting clubs and cultural and arts organisations will continue to suffer from a collapse in revenue, which unless restored to some extent, will result in them not being able to operate activities that are important for social well-being and connection. further exacerbating mental and physical health issues if left unaddressed. There is a need for the availability of grants to businesses and community organisations, including sporting and cultural boards. Urgently need funded outreach for rough sleepers across the eastern region. There are no funded services to do this in Boroondara. Urgent funding need for food and material relief. As I said, this is what we know now, and it is before JobKeeper and JobSeeker expire. Our businesses have suffered a huge hit. You only have to walk down our strip shopping areas to see all the closed shops. Yet many of the initiatives in our April package end in September. What a lot of councils have done is to allocate part of their 2021 COVID package, and the rest is unallocated, which allows the councils the ability to respond when the community needs become apparent. How would we pay for this? Well, we can't take any loan, can't take out a loan if needs arise, because all loans need to be detailed in our budgets now, and they need to be for capital projects. The budget, in this budget also projects a substantial deficit for 2021. The simplest way will be to delay a major project, which is what most councils have done. So for those reasons, I cannot support this budget in its current form. This is not the budget for these times.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. Councillor Park.
Thank you, Mayor. And firstly, I'd like to endorse your comments. I think you summed it up very well. I had a late-minute deputation from a dog wondering if there's a dog park on the horizon. I'm not sure about that, but certainly keen to make sure that we're not barking up the wrong tree. I, for the life of me, can't understand the relevance of what Karanga might happen to be doing. It's simply and utterly irrelevant to the city of Boroondara, and quite frankly, to compare the two councils is gobsmacking. I mean, our level of resources and the level of officer advice and experience that is at our fingertips far outstrips anything that's on offer at Corangamite, with the greatest respect to that council and their officers. It's just, you know, I'm not sure when we started saying, well, those councils are doing this, so surely we must too. That's never been, in the 7.5 years that I've been on this council, that's never been the way that we do business, and quite frankly, it shouldn't be the way that we start doing business now. Look, it's no secret that Councillors Ross and Addis have opposed the QREC Centre from day one, and the simple fact is that deferring that project would be financially irresponsible. We've got a window here to keep that project on track and on budget, and if we defer the project as they have said implicitly, although interestingly not explicitly, then what will happen is the costs will blow out as the construction sector comes under pressure post-COVID-19, and we have clear advice about the implications for deferring that project. It would be utterly irresponsible to the residents that we serve. And one of the good things about the approach that has been taken in this council up until now is that we haven't worried if a particular project is in our own cabbage patch or not. We've looked at the whole of the city and treated the needs accordingly. And the Kew Rec Centre is long overdue, long overdue. The Kew residents have sat and waited very patiently for something to be done about that by council. Tonight we've got a great budget, and it does address the needs of our community as we can reasonably foresee at present. As the Mayor indicated, there's $4.5 million that's earmarked for COVID-19 response. But let's not kid ourselves. The City of Boroondara is a council. It's not the state government. It's not the federal government. And many of the responses that Councillor Ross referred to are clearly the responsibility of state and federal government and not that of local government. And of all people, Councillor Ross should well know the importance for us to be vigilant against cost shifting. The proper response in respect of those matters by the City of Boroondara is for us to advocate to those levels of government to make sure that government response is appropriate. Not for us to go out and apply band-aids at ratepayers' expense. There's been more than enough cost shifting over the years, particularly from state government, that we can't afford to tolerate anymore. That would be irresponsible and that would be unfair to the residents of Boroondara. So I wholeheartedly endorse the budget, and I also take the time to endorse the comments by Councillor Hurd. And quite frankly, I agree, the tuck stand is something that is long overdue, and we do need to get there, as indeed is the Kew Library. They're both projects that I'd like to see come forward at some point so that those needs can be addressed. But for tonight, absolutely and utterly endorse the budget. Thank you, Mayor.
Just one moment, councillors. We appear to be experiencing some technical difficulties with Councillor Hurd, and I'm just seeking some advice on that. Hold on. Councillors, the advice is that we adjourn for a few moments, and Councillor Wegman, I do note that you are moving that motion, and Councillor Park, you second the motion for an adjournment, and Councillor Wegman, you want to speak when we return. Yep. Thank you very much, councillors. Bear with us, it will be just a few moments. Thank you, councillors, for bearing with us while we solve the issues surrounding Councillor Hurd, and he is back. Wonderful. I'm in search of a motion to resume the meeting. Councillor Thompson, and seconded Councillor Hollingsworth. There being no opposition, we are now resumed. Thank you, councillors. We are now going to resume the debate. And Councillor Wegman, you indicated that you wanted to speak, and then Councillor Thompson after him.
Thank you, Madam. Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I appreciate that. I hadn't planned to speak. I think the comments of Councillors Park, Hurd, and others have summarised the situation very well, and they've done justice to the quality of the budget tonight. However, some of the comments I heard from Councillors Addis and Ross left me quite disturbed because, in my opinion, they add up or amount to little more than damning with faint praise. And this budget is much better than that. All councillors had the opportunity to partake in the discussions and the deliberations and the consideration of this budget. And if a particular councillor's input wasn't accepted and didn't reign on the day, you know, so be it. And that's how this democracy works. That's how this council works. You have your input and then you live with the outcome. I think it's churlish not to support the budget. And I think it's little better than a spoilt child taking their bat and ball and going home. I'm really quite displeased with how this has happened on this budget. I expected better of both of those councillors. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Wegman. And if I could please ask people to focus their attention on the issues at hand and not make personal remarks. But I will now ask Councillor Thompson if you would like to make some remarks.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I also agree with my colleagues who've been presenting before us. I think, as Councillor Park indicated, this is the right budget for this moment in time. We can't foreshadow the changes in our community as it develops over the coming months, so we need to put a budget out for consultation. This is the one that we're putting out, and it has had a number of months of deliberation leading up to today. We might not necessarily agree as councillors on every item, and it's a tough budget regardless. So I think just one thing in particular with regard to QREC is the timing of putting a project like that out to the market is now. It is a project that the community and the industry will actually accept with welcome arms, because we don't have a lot of construction work proceeding at the moment. And generally when that happens, the market actually tells you a very competitive price. So delaying it will actually increase the cost of this project, particularly if it is delayed 12 months, and the community won't see a cent of what that costs. I've heard comments from colleagues about contingencies, securing rate interest for a COVID fighting fund and those sorts of things. I mean, obviously the community will have input into this budget, and that's something for them to consider and give us the feedback as we go. I do recognise that our traders and our businesses are doing it tough, as everyone is and has been. Getting initiatives to get them back up and running is good, but the advocacy that we should be doing is really to the state on a number of these sorts of things, and get the ball rolling on projects and initiatives that really benefit our community directly. So this may not be the perfect budget that we have in front of us, but it is the right budget for this moment in time, and I wholeheartedly endorse this going out to the community for them to have a look at this and give us our feedback. And then we can have a look at this in a couple of weeks' time again. So I support this budget.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Before I return to the mover, which is Councillor Healy, I just wanted to reiterate a couple of remarks that I made earlier. There has been the figure of $4.5 million mentioned several times, but I wanted to redraw a line under what I said earlier, but which said that in terms of what we're spending and the response we're giving to COVID-19, it's more than just a $4.5 million package. I said that it was not a single line item budget, and to say that we are needing a contingency special slush fund for COVID actually doesn't do the budget in front of us justice. There is planning to respond to our community to deliver the services that they need in every item. It's a whole of organisation response, and it's $16 million across this financial year and next financial year. Yeah, we don't know what we don't know, and we will cross, to quote an old saying, we will cross that bridge when we come to it. But that's what contingency planning is all about, and that has been done in a responsible way in this budget. So I want to thank my fellow councillors for their remarks, and I would like to commend the budget to my fellow councillors and pass the time now over to Councillor Healy as the mover of the motion. Councillor Healy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you to everyone for their contributions. I think it's worth understanding and resetting the role of local government. The role of local government is not one that's responsible for unemployment benefits or responsible for the economy or responsible for social welfare. These belong to the state and federal governments. Notwithstanding, we are one of the bigger funders for CamCare, which is an outreach organisation in our area. And I have seen the officers working with some of our community outreach organisations, propping them up through this. And also the fact that everything that we do as a council is for our community. Every dollar we collect in rates goes back into our community, and that's very important. I think I'm not an economist, but I understand enough about economics to know that if you want to drive the country into recession, you can prevaricate over your spending. That's the easiest way to cause people to become unemployed. What we can do is continue with our program, and I already would reflect that during the course of this term we've already held back a number of projects, the Q Library, which really should be starting this year or next year under original plans, but was held back on the basis of responsible financial planning for the overall infrastructure projects that we need to do and need to renew for our community. These are responsible things that are planned. So one of the most beneficial things we can do is provide certainty around our spending to the Victorian community and play our part. Now, I noticed in 2009, 2010, when the GFC hit, we were encouraged by the administration to go on a program of capital works that hadn't been seen before in Boroondara's history. And so you saw renewal right up through the centre, through Hawthorn and Camberwell, then it went over to the south, and then it worked its way back. But in each case, everything was done on what is the state of that asset and what needs to be renewed first and what can wait, because you can't do it all at once. So we have criteria that help us judge that. For all that time, the people in Kew in the northern parts of town paid their rates and saw all of these projects happening. They didn't complain. And now it's time that we get to a point where the project that's probably the only project since the Kew Courthouse that's happened in Kew. And I think it needs to happen. It needs to happen to support our community most of all. But it will also have a great impact on surrounding businesses as all of those tradies go and buy their coffees and lunches and everything else that happens, whether it's their dry cleaning, shop at our supermarkets, have lunch in the local stores, visit a chiropractor, whatever it is, that money will go around several times in our community and in other communities. So I think it's responsible that when you have shovel-ready projects that were planned to go as planned, and I fully suspect that even we might get some money from the state governments towards our budget because they're calling for shovel-ready projects. And I know Walmer Street Bridge is a shovel-ready project in many ways, and I hope that they pick that one up. But that's not in the, that it has an allocation in this budget, but it's not for the new budget. The spending in our budget is based on quality needs analysis and a hierarchy of needs that the officers provide for us through analysis and good planning. The reason that we can do this is we have been very good planners financially, I think. And even so, we're still able to turn around and create $4.5 million in the lead up to the end of June for our traders and small businesses. And in this 15 months, across the budget is smattered, including that 4.5, 16 million. So let's say there's another 11.5 there to go. Now, it's not called a COVID-19 fund, but it's equal or better than perhaps what some other councils of our size might be doing. I don't know, but it's there, and a rose by any other name would still smell as sweet. So I would ask councillors to support the budget. Let's get it out to the community so that they can tell us what they think of the budget. This is a great way for us to show leadership. I think this is leadership to, in this time, provide certainty so that people have certainty about what's happening in their life with their jobs. And this is our way of doing it. And I fully commend the budget to go out for community consultation and urge others to do the same. Thank you, Madam Mayor. And thank you to our officers who've toiled long and hard to help us put this together.
Thank you, Councillor Healy. And again, want to reiterate a thank you to all the councillors who have participated in this quite difficult process as we negotiated the budget discussions in a new way, because we had to do it online to be COVID-19 safe. So it has been challenging, and I commend all the councillors in the rigorous way that they have approached the budget, and also for the officers for all that they have done to support us through this process and provide us with the frank and fearless advice that is so necessary for us to be able to do this kind of planning and delivery for our community. So without further ado, I will now put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? As I call your name, if you could put your hands down. Councillor Sinfield, Councillor Park, Councillor Thompson, Councillor Wegman, Councillor Hollingsworth, Councillor Healy, Councillor Hurd, and myself, Councillor Watson. All against, please raise your hand. Councillor Ross and Councillor Addis. Thank you, councillors. I declare the motion carried, and we will now put the motion budget out for community consultation. Moving on to the next item on the agenda this evening, item 7.2 is revised instrument of delegation from Council to Chief Executive Officer, and we're going to hear a presentation from Celia Robinson, the Coordinator of Governance.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillors, before you tonight is a revised instrument of delegation from Council to the Chief Executive Officer. The instrument was last amended in March this year in response to COVID-19 to make provision for particular decisions to be made by the Chief Executive Officer in the event that a quorum of Council was unable to be formed. Now that Council is able to meet virtually, this delegation to the Chief Executive Officer is no longer required, and it is appropriate to return to the previous instrument of delegation. In doing so, recent advice from Maddox lawyers about this delegation has been sought and considered. In accordance with their advice, the instrument has been updated to reflect the recent legislative changes as a result of the proclamation of the Local Government Act 2020. Including that the Chief Executive Officer is not able to appoint an acting Chief Executive Officer for a period exceeding 28 days, adopt or amend the governance rules, which are required to be adopted by Council by the 1st of September 2020 and will be the subject of a future report to Council, and appoint a chair or members of a delegated committee. The updated instrument is before you this evening for Council's consideration. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Ms Robinson. Councillors, are there any questions for Ms Robinson this evening? There appears to be. Councillor Hurd.
As printed, happy to move the motion as printed, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hurd. And in search of a second, I think I saw Councillor Park. Thank you very much for seconding the motion. Is there anyone opposed to the motion this evening? There being no one opposed to the motion, Councillor Hurd, would you like to speak?
Very briefly, welcome to Boroondara, Ms Robinson. Glad you could join us. This motion is procedural. It's done by a very competent officer and department, and I don't think I need to take up any more time by saying any more and commending the motion to my colleagues.
Thank you, Councillor Hurd, and Councillor Park, with your indulgence, I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? If you could put your hands down when I call your name. Councillor Healy, Councillor Thompson, Councillor Ross, Councillor Sinfield, Councillor Park, Councillor Wegman, Councillor Addis, Councillor Hollingsworth, Councillor Hurd and myself, Councillor Watson. I declare that motion carried unanimously. Councillors, that concludes the business of this evening. I'd like to thank you for participating, and also for thank our community members who have joined us this evening for their interest in the council budget. Look forward to their comments and participation in the consultation process that will now commence. So this is the end of council business for the evening, and I declare the council meeting closed. And thank you for your participation this evening. Good night.